Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's Mirror of Intimacy webinar. I'm Dr. Alexandra Katehakis, and today is Monday, March 4th. It's a beautiful spring day here in Los Angeles, and our topic is awareness, which I think is a really appropriate topic for the beginning of spring. So a few things before we start. As usual, I want to remind you to type your questions in the Q&A box. And that's in the Q&A box only, not the chat box, please. And I will answer them as we go along. Also, be sure to leave us your comments on Amazon. If you have any comments to leave for Mirror of Intimacy, let us know what you like about the book, how you use the book, maybe ways in which it has influenced some of your decisions in life. And if you're watching this on YouTube, don't forget to subscribe to our channel by clicking the subscribe button below. So that way you never miss a post. And you can also keep up with us on what we're doing by following me on Instagram at Alex Katehakis or at Center for Healthy Sex. So lastly, I want you to know that I have a new webinar series coming soon based on my new workbook called What Turns You On? A Guide to Living Your Best Sex Life. And I'm excited to share this new series with you. So make sure you join our mailing list by visiting centerforhealthysex.com and sign up under Contact Us section. And that way you can keep an eye out for the first installment so you don't miss it. Today's quote is from Deepak Chopra, and he writes, "Ultimately, spiritual awareness unfolds when you're flexible, when you're spontaneous, when you're detached, when you're easy on yourself and easy on others." So let's take a look at that again, that spiritual awareness. And what is spiritual awareness? How would you define that? Because I think everybody defines that differently. And I would challenge you to ask yourself that question. How do I define spiritual awareness? What does that mean to me? And he says that that particular kind of awareness unfolds when we're flexible. So being flexible internally means being able to go with the flow or roll with the punches, and not being so internally rigid or black or white. And oftentimes people that struggle with addiction are actually quite black and white in their thinking. It's all or nothing, this or that, as opposed to being willing to kind of hang out in the gray areas and maybe see what the possibilities are or see what emerges or pops up, if you will. So when you're flexible, when you're spontaneous, and I think in order to be spontaneous, you have to have an internal flexibility. You can't be rigid or tight or say, I can't cross that line because it's, I can't do that. It doesn't allow for the testing of flexible boundaries. And also when you're detached, and I think what he means from that is detached from an outcome, not having a preference, or maybe you'll be disappointed that your preference didn't get met, but you're also open to another possibility, something that you didn't foresee, or something else shows up. And also when you're easy on yourself and easy on others. And what does that mean? It means that you really have any inner critic you might have going in your head in check, that you are not beating yourself up if things don't go the way you thought they should go, or you're not angry, or you're not judgmental of yourself or other people. I mean, we've all heard people that just talk horribly to themselves, call themselves idiots or stupid, or they think other people are stupid. So if you can notice the self-dialogue that you have, that you are able to be compassionate to yourself, be kind to yourself. And the way you talk to yourself is often a reflection of how you talk to other people. So I would never imagine calling somebody an idiot. I think that's just, shaming and degrading and rude and mean and every other thing in the world. And if somebody isn't competent at what they're doing, you can talk to them about their competence. But calling oneself an idiot is an act of violence on oneself. So you cannot perpetrate violence on yourself and also find peace. You can't perpetrate that kind of violence on yourself and also find love, because talking to someone you love like that is not an exemplification of love. So this quote is about being flexible, being open, being kind and compassionate, and that is when spiritual awareness arrives. So some people say that awareness is our original state. It's a state in which we are not bound or limited by a sense of self, that we experience ourselves as consciousness, and we can meet the consciousness of the world, of the universe. Often we most easily have this experience in nature when we have a sense of awe or wonder or magnificence or beauty. And this same expansive, unbounded consciousness is who we are. It's our original state. And this inclusive consciousness clues us into the nature of all of life, um, because it's not just me or the forest, it's me as the forest and you as the forest and everyone else as the forest. So our very existence endures only as a result of our awareness. And from that awareness comes our love, our joy, our capacities for being with other people. And when we can see life as a unified whole, rather than through the narrow, distorted filter of past trauma, or this othering that we have going on in the world right now with the various wars taking place and atrocities on all sides, people being killed on all sides of these conflicts, that's not seeing humanity as a unified whole. That's seeing us and them. And instead of this obvious recognition that if I kill your son and you kill my son, we're both in writhing pain. So what is the point of any of it? So when we can see our friends and our foes as our very own self, then we are not looking at distortion. We can see ourselves exactly as we are, as the way a clean mirror reflects who we are, as opposed to a dirty, distorted, muddied mirror. So awareness lets us make informed and wise choices, right? We are thinking things through. We're using our higher selves, our wisdom. We're not just going through what Antonio Damasio calls the quick and dirty route, where data streams into our brains and it goes right to the primitive part of our brains, and then we react in primitive ways. Awareness, when we slow things down, when we can perceive things, we're really using our higher cortical functions and we're making wise choices. And that includes with whom we choose to be in relationship with. And that awareness also transfers to our bodies, our minds, our spirits, and it leads us towards a desire to be sexual that's appropriate. It's not just generated by the primitive part of our brains, which, the brain is still the largest sex organ in the body, nor is it being driven by our genitals. We're actually using our wisdom. We're thinking about who this person is and if we want to be in active relationship with them, and discerning whether they're a good fit for us. And it may not be that they're not good people. They may be nice people. They may be polite, but it means that we don't have an agreement on perception. We don't understand the world in the same way. We have different standards, different value systems. We would just do things completely differently. And so when we have that awareness, that person might be a nice friend or acquaintance, but it doesn't mean there's somebody that we want to turn our body, mind, and soul over to. And so when you think about that, when you're thinking about a sexual partner or sexual liaison, how aware are we with our own senses, our own bodies, and what we feel safe with? So Taylor writes, my first cousin always, and my dumb self did XYZ, and my close friend always says, and my fat self did XYZ. Many times during our conversations, I always just listen politely, but often wonder if I should correct them on this. Well, I think that's a tricky thing. You can, instead of correcting them, you can be curious about it and say, I noticed that you often refer to yourself as dumb, or you often refer to yourself as fat. And every time you do it, I sort of cringe inside because I would never think of you that way. When I think of you, if somebody asked me about you, I wouldn't say, oh, he or she is dumb or he or she is fat. That's not the first thing I think about you. So I wonder why you do that to yourself, because it's really painful to hear you talk that way about yourself. And then they'll give you an answer. And then I think you can say, well, I wonder what it would be like if when you're with me, you don't call yourself dumb or you don't call yourself fat. Do you think you could do that? And see what they say to that. And that would be a way for you to point it out by talking about how it hurts you to hear it, how you would never describe them that way, and how you wish they wouldn't abuse themselves like that in front of you, and see what they come up with, because that could be an incredible gift that you're giving them by pointing that out gently. So thank you for that question. It's a great question. Because you can imagine if somebody refers to them themselves and you start, criticizing them, like, you sound so stupid when you call yourself dumb, or why do you do that? It's so annoying. Now you're calling them annoying. You're just piling on in that moment, as opposed to letting them know the effect it has on you and how sad it makes you feel, or how you don't like that they are treating themselves that way. So I was starting to talk about sex and how awareness of the body, mind, the spirit, and certainly awareness during sex doesn't mean judging or comparing ourselves to our partner or anybody else in the world, but it's an alertness to our shared experience. It's an awareness of our breathing, where our eyes are focused, the sensations in our bodies. Um, People sometimes struggle with staying with the sensations in their bodies. They go right to their head and they go to judgment, or they go to anxiety about their performance. So there's a whole lot of awareness that goes on during sex that has to do with um, how you're feeling about yourself, what you're thinking about, how you're looking at your partner, if you're talking to your partner, what you're experiencing in your body, whether you are touching them in order to feel the sensation of their skin or wanting to feel the sensation of your skin. So how is your awareness focused on pleasure as opposed to performance and doing it right? So too much, quote, awareness can be like anxiety or the ego. That can be the enemy of eroticism, since whether we're judging ourselves or our partners, we're acting from a need to prove ourselves and that we're good enough. And so I'm not talking about self-consciousness when I talk about awareness. Those are two different things. Self-consciousness is generally born of shame and worried about what somebody else is thinking. I'm talking about a real, genuine mindfulness on pleasure and sensations in the body. And if we only focus on ourselves, or only are focused on our lover, whether we're in criticism or in, idolizing them, like, oh my God, they're so gorgeous or perfect, and I pale in comparison, or they're not this enough or that enough, so I'm criticizing them. So I'm either going into a one down position or a one up position. That will destroy eroticism, which really requires sexual connection. Without a deep connection to somebody, maybe even if you just met them, but you're making eye contact, you're having some sort of felt sense with that person. It's not strictly just about getting off. You will move into deeper realms of eroticism when you can make a heart connection. And I know a lot of people will say that's a judgment, or you can have plenty of anonymous sex and it's good. And it all depends on what you want and what you're looking for and how you describe good or great. But remember, we started this um, conversation with spiritual awareness. And so for spiritual awareness, I think you have to have a connectedness, which comes from the heart, which typically comes from both people making direct contact with each other, really seeing each other and feeling into each other, and having the experience of what Thich Nhat Hanh called interbeing, where there is an interpenetration taking place. When in those moments of heightened eroticism, you don't know who has the penis and who has the vagina, or whose vagina it is or whose penis it is, depending on the configuration of the people. There is this interpenetration that takes place that moves us into spiritual awareness. Someone writes, can you speak to how the practice of awareness can help to hinder being able to start re-engaging in physical intimacy when recovering from betrayal trauma? My husband had a 2.5-year affair. He's totally doing his work, is transformed, and we are better connected than ever before. And yet it's still really hard to not have intrusive thoughts and wondering what he did with the affair partner. Well, I think that is something you're probably going to have to sort out before you're engaged in sex. There are a couple things I have to say about that. Some of them may not be that popular, so I want to be careful here. These traumatic and intrusive thoughts are really based on the brain not being able to work them all the way through. And so there are different treatments for that. Some of them are EMDR. Some might include working with a somatic practitioner that's really helping the person move into their body and really work through and feel what they maybe can't feel in order to move those thoughts through the brain. Because typically that kind of obsession and intrusion is a left brain activity, and there's a stickiness or a stuckness to it if it's obsessive. If it's intrusive, it's usually more on the trauma end of the spectrum. There are people now that are working with psychedelic assisted therapy to help partners specifically with betrayal trauma that is extraordinarily effective. So these are the three modalities that I know of that can help people just put all of that looping away, put it back where it belongs. Another maybe radical conversation would be to talk to your partner about what exactly was arousing for him or her about the affair partner. And this has to be done once there's been a lot of de-escalation of anger and hurt. It has to be done from a solid place in oneself so that you can be able to hear it. So if I were to ask my partner about his or her affair partner, I'd want to be paying attention to what was different, what was unique, what was missing, why didn't we have that? What could we do to create that same sort of attraction and novelty? And how much of what my partner is telling me is actually arousing to me? And that is typically a taboo conversation. Nobody wants to talk about that. But oftentimes, after discovery, partners become hypersexual. And in part, it's because it's arousing. And I want to be clear about that too, that when we are in a state of hyper arousal in the sympathetic nervous system, that is a heightened state of fight, flight, freeze, not freeze, sorry, fight or flight. And in that, there's an excitation. And that excitation might be by hearing the details of the sexual exploit with somebody else, which people who aren't betrayed find kind of hot and exciting. That's a part of what pornography does. So this has to be in its right place. And what I'm talking about is extremely nuanced. I'm not saying that when somebody discovers that their partner's been cheating on them for 20 years, they should think that's erotic and arousing and that's going to help their sex life. It doesn't. It actually goes in the opposite direction. But I'm talking about down the road. If you really want to be a good scientist, if you can be stable, if you can be a good scientist and think about these components and not make it about that other person being better than you or sexier than you or anything than you. That person came around at the right time. Both people that engaged in that lie were troubled, and that had nothing to do with you. But what you're interested in and what are the arousing components, and what are the component pieces that we as a couple can bring to our sex life. So I hope that is somewhat helpful, because it's a very complex question. And I think one that needs to be talked about a lot in therapy and with your partner. So think about observing your setting, um, your pleasure, and your partner's pleasure as well, and bear witness to with full attention to the sensations in your body, and notice the signs of ecstasy coming from your partner. And that is sort of a call and response that goes on in sex and sexuality is we are very aroused by sounds. I mean, women certainly are. Women are very auditory. Men tend to be more visual. And so there is a dance that takes place through all of the five senses, that's part of an ecstatic interplay between the two. And when your attention is on your sex and sexuality, then that is where the arousal comes from. If you notice during sex that you have your attention on the sensation in your body, but then your body pulls away, or you get scared and then you start thinking again, that's something you want to try and work out in therapy to find out what's happening, that your brain and body are reading a lack of safety here, unless you know why it's not safe. If it ties to past trauma, for example, and something that you need to work out, on your own. So let's see. Taylor says, I recently became aware of the damaging effects of years of watching pornography has done to my mind. I'm a male, and in a non-sexual context, women find me very masculine, yet for whatever reason, I'm mostly in a submissive mindset. Well, in sexual experiences, well, that doesn't matter. If that is your preference and that's what turns you on, then you have to be secure in that, and you've got to be able to talk to your partner about that in a way that has ownership of your sexuality. And I earlier was talking about my new workbook called What Turns You On. And you can find that book on Amazon, and somebody will put that link in the text box, in the chat box for you. But that book really will help you ferret out what's true for you. And if you don't want to be submissive, then that is something that you really have to work out in therapy, because domination and submission are energies in sex. And forget about BDSM or role playing or anything like that. There are times when somebody's on their back and somebody's not. And when you're on your back, you're in de facto a submissive position typically. So think of these as energies that shift and change. And then you really have to examine what about the submissive state is arousing to you, how that came to pass, what you don't like about it when you say, I don't like about it, but you're also saying, I do like it. I like it because it's arousing to me. I don't like it because I don't want to be in that mindset. These are things to work out in therapy. Somebody writes, recovering sex and love addict here, and a gay man. I have had thousands of sexual hookups, but never felt they were authentic sexual expression. I was full of guilt after, so always anxious and very kinky and involving pain. I'm trying to figure out what is healthy sexuality expression to me. What would you say healthy sexual expression is? Or do you have a general answer? Well, unfortunately, I don't. That is a question that each person has to answer for themselves through a lot of investigation. And it's not surprising to me at all that you weren't expressing yourself authentically sexually, because you can't know what that is. You're having sex, it's high arousal, you feel guilty afterwards, and there was probably some shame that accompanied that. And you're involving pain. So you're really jacking up your nervous system for the highest high, the highest orgasm, but you don't actually know who you are sexually, and what is really true for you sexually. And so, again, I would suggest that you work with a therapist, and I have a workbook called Sexual Reflections that was designed specifically for sex addicts in recovery to help answer these questions. And then the workbook after that would be What Turns You On. So I suggest you do a lot of writing about this and a lot of processing about it. And maybe sex for you right now is something that's quite wholesome and simple. That you definitely have to know the person's first and last name. You have to be at somebody's house or apartment. It can't be in a public place. But you want to dial this way back. And it may be hard for you to get an erection, but that's okay. You're really exploring touch and slowing everything down so you can feel what it feels like to be with another person without racing through it and just using your body as a tool for arousal. So good luck with your recovery, and just know that that's a process and it's going to take time. Someone says, can you please speak to the company of enjoying a Mr. Right versus a Mr. Right now? We're both respectful and kind to each other, and he told me up front that he's not ready for a long-term relationship. After thinking about that, I felt the same. In other words, we're just enjoying what we have at the moment. Just wondering if you have further input. Um, yeah, I would say that, if it's enjoyable and it's pleasurable and it serves a purpose for you in terms of pleasure and enjoying your body, I would suggest that you delve deeper into that. And if you have this kind of, playmate, so to speak, what are the things that you want to try sexually that you've been afraid to try or have been judgmental about yourself or unsure of? If you have a safe partner to try things on with, then you have a good opportunity to do that. I think the uh, danger is not the right word, but the downside to a relationship like this for people that want to be in a relationship is that you can get really comfortable and not bother actually looking for the kind of relationship you do want. But what this person is writing, and I think I know who you are, hello, is that neither one of you are looking for Mr. Right or Ms. Right right now. Oh, Mr. Right or Mr. Right, right, Mr. Rights right now. So then just enjoy it. Right? But don't make it habitual if eventually you do want to be in a committed relationship. So thank you for that. Okay, if love and passion was never, I think that means there, and that interperson was achieved, but there was betrayal and deep damage. So love and passion was never there. There was betrayal. Is it possible to fix betrayal, or is love not enough and deep connection not enough? On the one hand, I don't want to relive hurt or triggers, but at the same time, haven't been able to find such an authentic connection and keep feeling dry going through the motions. Well, I mean, the truth is, if you have not rebuilt trust, then all the love and compassion and kindness in the world is not going to go very far. Because without trust, you really cannot have these other experiences. And trust is something that is built sort of moment to moment in our lives and in our relationships. I mean, I certainly know in psychotherapy that trust between me and my clients or me and my clients is built over time, and it's never a foregone conclusion. One or the other of us can say or do something that hurts the other person's feelings, and then that trust has to be rebuilt. And that is true in love relationships also. We generally trust our partners, but we hurt each other all the time. We say dumb things or we do dumb things that we weren't really thinking about, and we didn't realize it was going to hurt our partner, and it does. And so those are little chinks in trust all the time, and sometimes safety. So you have to do the work of rebuilding a relationship with trust and safety, typically in couples therapy, and also by doing daily check-ins and checking with your partner to find out what he or she needs in order to restore that trust over time. Someone writes, my partner wants to open up our relationship, but only for him and not for me. Obviously, that isn't fair. How do I convey that I want the same that he does? He wants to have threesomes with me and other women, which I'm good with. It's when he wants to have one-on-one time with me and them. I also want one-to-one time with someone. He doesn't seem to understand that or understand why and gets sad and or jealous. Well, that's a hard one for me to weigh in on because as a female, it seems to me like that's a double standard and it's not okay. And I would say it lacks a maturity that, there's an old saying, what's good for the goose is good for the gander. So I think you probably need to buy some books. There's a book called Polysecure you might want to look at, which is more about polyamorous relationships. But there are plenty of books on non-monogamy, on consensual non-monogamy also you can take a look at. And so you can look at a book called The New Monogamy, where there are contracts and agreements, but you might want to find a therapist, and you could certainly find one here at Center for Healthy Sex, who will help the two of you negotiate these waters and have a conversation. If you feel like it's unsafe to have the conversation with your partner alone, then have it in a couples therapy forum where you talk about why it's important for both of you to have this latitude and what are the rules going to be about it? And are you going to adhere to the rules? And how are you going to take care of each other first? That you are the primary relationship, that what happens for between the two of you is the most important, and that you have, agreements in place. So this is not going to go well for either one of you if you're holding a resentment or feeling like it's not fair. What may end up happening is that you end up cheating, you end up doing it behind his back because he can't tolerate hearing it in a straight confrontational way. I was just curious if scientifically you subscribe to the neuroplasticity changes possible model for sex addiction, or do you believe the disease of sex addiction exists forever? No, I think our brains are neuroplastic till the day we die, and there's plenty of science that backs that up. And so if people do the work they need to do, they change not only the structures of the brain, but the functions of the brain as well, depending on what we're talking about. So it's too broad of a stroke to say like all sex addicts will change their ways. Because each and every individual is different, and that's true with any ism that you want to think about. So plenty of alcoholics, sex addicts, drug addicts change their brains and change their lives for good. And it doesn't mean it doesn't remain a one day at a time endeavor, and one that requires a lot of focus and attention and care. Right. So recognize and focus your attention on the way both of your bodies move during sex and take your cues from your interactions with each other rather than from self-consciousness or being in your own head. Because it's like dancing. If you're partner dancing, if you're looking down at your feet or counting your steps, it's going to be stilted and your partner's going to get frustrated and annoyed because you're not with them. But if you can trust and surrender to the dance and you can make eye contact with your partner and move with their body, and your bodies start to create a synchrony together and they move in tandem with each other, then you'll be dancing before you know it and you don't have to think about it. Your feet will move, your body will move, you'll enjoy yourself, and sex is exactly like that. So take a moment now to ask about how you practice conscious connected awareness. Think about that, maybe jot it down. So how do you practice conscious connected awareness? One simple way is when you come home at the end of the day, if you're at home, get up and greet your partner and make eye contact and say hello. Right? If you're coming through the door and you don't see your partner, you can call out for them and say hello. And when they round the corner, make eye contact with them. Eye contact is such a powerful way of connecting. The eyes are the window to the autonomic nervous system and to the soul. So it's how we find each other. It's how we see each other. It's how we look. Um, I'm often surprised at couples who cannot make eye contact with each other or don't. They're just talking at each other constantly. So that simple act of starting to regulate your shame by making eye contact is a way to make connected awareness. And then when you become cognizant of the special ways your lover responds to your style of lovemaking, then how you respond to your partners, you've obtained a pretty special knowledge that no one else possesses. And that is one of the lovely secrets about sex and sexuality, is that you know your partner deeply. You know the little things about them that are not just arousing, but that are deeply touching to them and to you. And that connects you and that builds your attachment center also. So that person becomes the most important person in the world to you, the person that's got you, that gets you, that has your back. And with that there is a powerful container for sex and sexuality. So you're now conscious with this kind of awareness, and you're informed in your awareness of who both of you are sexually. And that brings you closer and closer to true eroticism. And eroticism, like many things in life, is intimate. There's no stopping point. We're always changing, we're always exploring. This is about a deepening in our mind, body, soul. It's not just, well, there are a limited number of positions and you can only have sex a certain number of ways. It's beyond that. It's a deeper knowing. It's going beyond yourself, as John O'Donohue said. So, how aware are you of yourself? Take a moment today to be interested in your stream of consciousness, and notice how much time you spend in your head, versus being with your essential existence, versus walking outside and noticing the full force of the day, whatever the climate is bringing you today, so that you really feel it in your bones if you can and celebrate it. Or notice the tightness that it brings you if it's freezing cold, but something where you stay present in the body with every step that you take. And then ask yourself, what are the old thoughts and judgments you have about sexuality? And invite in a new script about who you are as an aware erotic being. And the person who wrote about having a lot of compulsive sex and not knowing who his authentic sexuality is, I would invite you to start to journal about that also and ask yourself, what is a new script I want to tell about myself versus what I was telling myself, the way I was treating myself? How do I want to treat myself now? What kind of sexuality do I want to have? What is authentic for me? How I express myself, how I laugh, what's joyful for me, what's fun, what's funny, what's pleasuring. And pay attention to every move your lover makes during sex. Again, not in a sort of glaring, um, monitoring sort of way, but bearing witness to the sights, the sounds, the tastes, and the physical feelings of your experience together without trying to make anything happen, without trying to bring somebody to orgasm. Just let it be and see what emerges. So I hope this conversation about spiritual awareness, bodily awareness, sexual awareness, erotic awareness has you walking without having any shield over your eyes today, where you can see the people around you more clearly, where you take a moment to say hello, where you check in with your own body and you ask yourself, what do I want? What do I need? What is in my best interest? And what can I bring to my lover? All of these sessions are available on our YouTube channel. So if you go to YouTube and type in Center for Healthy Sex, you'll find all of the Mirror of Intimacy webinars there. We've recorded everything for the last 4 years, so all of the topics are there. And then there's one final question here from Alicia. Post-betrayal trauma with a sex addict, I'm wondering how to move into new relationships. I've done a lot of work, but have found myself very scared to move into a new relationship. Well, I think it would be useful for you to make a very clear list of pros and cons about somebody. What are the qualities you're looking for? You should make a dating plan, which you can find in both Erotic Intelligence and I think in sexual reflections also, that's a version of a dating plan, but and then run this by a therapist also, or somebody that you really trust who knows you, so that you put some parameters around dating, because you want to look at your own sex and love issues. And I'm not saying that you by any means are a sex and love addict. I'm saying we all have sex and love issues. So I would have to ask myself, where do I collapse my boundaries? Where do I go too far? So an example might be like on a first date. You go out on a first date, let's say you go to dinner or you go for a walk along the beach or the pier, or you meet for an afternoon coffee, and you're really hitting it off with this person, but you don't contain it to, let's say, an hour and a half. It turns into 3 hours, and then it turns into let's go to a movie. And then before you know it, you've spent 8 hours with this person that you don't even know, and it's too much too fast. So make sure you have a cutoff time with your dates so you can go home and think about, what was that like? How do I feel? There's also a book called Wired for Dating that I highly recommend you get, which is about attachment dating, so that you can pay attention to how you feel after you've been in that person's presence. All right, one more question here. I want to ask your opinion about the future of sex addiction being added to the DSM and the fact that insurance companies lobby to block it. Residential centers are so expensive. Okay, so it's not actually the insurance companies that are lobbying to block it. It doesn't really go that way. Sex addiction is in the international classification of diseases called the ICD-11. You'll find it there as compulsive sexual behavior disorders. So the World Health Organization created a word, a phrase for it, and a definition for it. And so they have legitimated this problem. What the DSM does and doesn't do, I have no idea. It's highly politicized, like everything in our world today, unfortunately. Many people admit to residential treatment centers for depression or anxiety, or other problems that can often be the root of somebody's sexual compulsivity. So you have to get super creative with your therapist. And oftentimes the treatment centers are very, very good at helping people with their insurance. All right, on that note, stay aware. Happy beginning of spring. It certainly has come in like a lion here in Southern California, actually all of California. And so I look forward to seeing you in April. Take care.